In medieval Germany, a single apple on a noble table could mean death, not dessert. Behind the story of Snow White lies a real history of arsenic-laced fruit, mirrors worth more than estates, and mothers competing for power with lethal intent. But why did the original audience see the apple as an urgent warning, and what dangers did they recognize that we ignore today? Snow White's bite into the apple is not just a fairy tale moment. It is a scenario that would have felt alarming to a medieval household. In German noble kitchens, the tools of healing and harm often sat side by side. Apothecary jars held powders and tinctures, some meant to cure, others capable of killing. White arsenic, almost tasteless and easy to disguise, was among the most feared. A pinch dissolved into wine or mixed into food could bring on illness that looked like natural disease, not murder. Fruit, especially apples, held a special place on the table. Their firm flesh could hide a needle or a drop of poison. The sweet, crisp taste masked bitterness, and a polished skin gave no warning. Recipes from early modern German cookbooks describe how honey, sugar, or spiced syrups were used to blend and soften even the harshest flavors, making it simple for a determined poisoner to slip a fatal dose into a treat. An injected apple could hold a pocket of toxin just beneath the peel, invisible until bitten. The victim would taste only sweetness, never suspecting the danger. In a world where hospitality was sacred and refusing food was an insult, a single apple could become a weapon. The story's horror lies in this plausibility. The apple is not enchanted, but engineered. For anyone who knew the risks of household rivalry, the sight of fruit offered by a rival was enough to raise silent alarm. The poisoned apple in Snow White is a warning drawn from real methods, not just a symbol of temptation. In the courts of early modern Germany, a mirror was never just a household object. Imported Venetian glass, prized above silver and sometimes worth more than entire estates, hung in the private chambers of the elite. Inventories from Saxon and Bavarian noble houses list mirrors alongside jewels and tapestries, marking them as rare tokens of wealth and status. Dowry lists from the 16th century sometimes featured a single mirror as a bride's most valuable possession, reserved for those whose social rank demanded constant display. Every morning, the Queen's toilette became a ritual of surveillance. Attendants gathered as she faced the mirror, her reflection scrutinized for signs of youth, health, and beauty. This was no idle vanity. In a world where marriage alliances and inheritance depended on appearance, the mirror's verdict could mean the difference between security and isolation. Court etiquette books describe these moments as semi-public examinations, where a noblewoman's face was not just her own, but a reflection of her family's honor and her husband's prestige. Theological treatises warned of the dangers lurking behind glass. Preachers condemned the sin of pride, using the image of a woman gazing into a mirror as a warning against temptation and spiritual decay. Yet the same object was also a symbol of divine truth, a speculum revealing the soul's purity or corruption. In sermons and law books alike, the mirror was a device for measuring not just beauty, but legitimacy. When the queen in Snow White demands a verdict from her mirror, she is seeking more than flattery. She is asking for confirmation of her place at the top of a fragile social order. The mirror's answer, naming a younger rival, is a threat as real as any poison, a public declaration that her power is slipping away. In the earliest surviving manuscript of Snow White, written by the brothers Grimm around 1810, the queen who orders the child, yes, death, is not a stepmother at all. She is Snow White's own biological mother, a detail that would have been instantly recognizable and deeply unsettling to readers of the time. The original draft describes a mother who wishes for a beautiful daughter, only to see that wish become a threat to her own standing. As the child grows, her beauty is not just admired, it is measured against her mother S, and the story sets the stage for a rivalry rooted in blood and inheritance. Scholars Maria Tatar and Jack Zipes have traced how, in the years after this first draft, the Grimms began to rewrite the tale. By the time the story appeared in print in 1812, the queen had become a stepmother. Later editions hardened that distinction, making the villainous stepmother a fixture of the fairy tale canon. The change was not accidental. In the early 19th century, ideals of motherhood were shifting. The image of a mother plotting her daughter's murder was seen as too corrosive to the new bourgeois values that prized maternal virtue. Recasting the queen as a stepmother allowed the tale to keep its drama. Without directly indicting the family structure readers were meant to emulate. But the original version leaves no such distance. In the world of medieval and early modern German households, relationships between mothers and daughters could be fraught with dynastic tension. A daughter's youth and beauty could threaten a mother's influence, especially where marriage alliances and inheritance were at stake. The queen's jealousy is not merely personal. It is a reaction to the fear of being replaced, of losing status and security as a new generation comes of age. The violence that follows is not random. It is a calculated move to protect power, echoing the real anxieties of households where succession was everything. Seen this way, the tale reads less as a simple story of wickedness and more as a coded warning about the dangers that arise when the bonds of blood are twisted by ambition and fear. Snow White's body does not vanish into the earth. Instead, it is placed inside a transparent coffin, visible from every angle, watched day and night by those who cannot let her go. This is not a burial in darkness, but a spectacle of preservation. The practice would have been instantly recognizable in medieval Germany. 14th century churches across the region displayed the bodies of saints and martyrs in crystal reliquaries, their remains enclosed in glass or rock crystal shrines. Parishioners gathered to witness the incorrupt flesh of holy women, preserved as proof of purity and suffering. For noble families, too, death was sometimes a public affair. Temporary displays of daughters and young brides took place before burial, their bodies laid out in chapels or side rooms, sometimes with their faces revealed behind panes of polished glass. These rituals were not about closure. They were about making loss visible, transforming private grief into communal knowledge. In Snow White, the glass coffin turns a hidden crime into a permanent exhibit. The wronged girl becomes a relic of injustice, her beauty preserved as a silent accusation. The community is forced to look, unable to pretend that nothing has happened. The story's glass coffin is less a fantasy than a coded echo of real medieval displays, where the body of the innocent, preserved and on view, demanded a reckoning from all who passed by. Deep in the forests and mountains of central Germany, mines once stretched for miles beneath the earth. In the Harz and Erzgebirge regions, the search for silver and copper shaped entire communities. Children as young as 8 were sent underground, their small bodies suited for the narrowest seams where adults could not fit. 16th century woodcuts from Saxony show rows of boys hauling ore and swinging hammers in the dim tunnels, faces smudged with dust. These were not fairy tale dwarfs, but living workers, often stunted by malnutrition and harsh conditions, described in local records as Bergmannlein, the little mountain men. Folklore grew around these figures, blending the reality of child labor with stories of mysterious helpers or guardians of the mines. The dwarfs in Snow White's world echo this history, a collective of the exploited, living in darkness, extracting wealth that would never be theirs. Their underground home is not a magical refuge, but a mirror of the economic forces that shaped so many young lives, where innocence was traded for survival, and the dangers above ground were matched by the perils below. 3 times, the queen closes in. First, she tightens the bodice laces until Snow White's breath is cut off. Then she slips a poisoned comb into her hair, each attack more intimate, more practiced. The final strike comes with the apple, sweet, red, and deadly. This is not the chaos of sudden rage, but a methodical pursuit. German imperial court records from the 16th and 17th centuries describe cases where suspicion only hardened after repeated incidents. A servant who falls ill after several meals. A wife found weak after a series of mysterious accidents. Legal commentaries and household manuals from the period warn that a single misfortune may be chance, but 2 or 3 in succession demand vigilance. In sermons and popular printed guides, threefold repetition is a sign that accident has given way to intent. The Queen's persistence is not the stuff of fantasy. For historical audiences, this sequence of escalating harm would have been instantly recognized as the pattern of a predator, someone whose violence cannot be dismissed as a mistake. The story's structure mirrors the logic of real investigation. Repetition is the evidence, and the third attempt is the point where denial collapses and guilt stands exposed. Symbols from centuries ago still warn us. Power often hides behind innocence, and danger wears a familiar face. In a world where stories shape belief, the lessons beneath old tales remain urgent. The real threat is forgetting what these warnings once meant. Share your thoughts below.